PhotoShelter is the leader in online portfolio websites and tools for professional photographers. We help you get business, do business, and keep business. Good afternoon, everyone. It's Alan Murabayashi speaking to you from New York City, where we can't seem to catch a break with the weather. It was 8 degrees last night. And we didn't even have a polar vortex. The polar vortex is done. It was still 8 degrees, and tomorrow we're getting 5 to 7 inches of snow, which turn into rain because we have a nor'easter storm coming. But enough of that. Let's talk about something a little more exciting, building the right audience online. And before we even talk about that, I have some housekeeping notes. First, we are recording this webinar, so in case you need to cut out early, you can come back to our blog tomorrow at blog.photoshelter.com and take a look at the video version of this. The other thing you should note is we are live tweeting, so if there's anything particularly interesting that you hear me say, which will be a surprise to me, but you can always hashtag it at hashtag PSWebinar or friend us or follow us at PhotoShelter on Twitter. And to the right of your computer, you should see a GoToWebinar control panel. And from that panel, you can ask us questions as we move along. And we'll do our best to sort of integrate those questions into the conversation as we move throughout the presentation. To kind of set the tone for this, you know, the presentation is going to be part sort of motivation to change the way that you approach your marketing, as well as having some marketing tips and tricks and understanding of marketing concepts, a lot of which we use at PhotoShelter ourselves. So they're kind of tried and true techniques that we've put into motion, and I'll talk about some of the PhotoShelter things we're doing. My mom always complains that I talk too quickly on these webinars, and today will be no exception because I have a ton of slides to go through. So if I'm moving very fast for you, I apologize in advance, but I'm going to do my best to get through everything. Go ahead and ask questions, and we'll try to make this a good time. So let me start with this first slide, and hopefully this will become sort of motivation for the rest of the year. It's only February. You still have a lot of time to change things. But if you've been in a malaise with your business or just kind of your photography in general, I will say this, and it's a mantra that I tell the staff at PhotoShelter quite often, which is business as usual leads to results as usual. And there's a lot of variance on this particular phrase. But the fact of the matter is, if you're not happy with the way things are going in your business life, in your personal life, in your life in general, if you keep doing the same things, nothing's ever going to change. You have to be the catalyst for change in your own business, in your own life, etc. So keep that in mind as you move through this presentation. Make sure you jot down notes. And then, more importantly, when we end this whole thing, make sure that you have some takeaways that you're going to actually work on improving. Let me move my cursor here, or try to move my cursor so it gets out of the way. Oh, the Mac is terrible. Okay. So the first thing that I want to say about marketing is this very key point. Who is the audience you have, and who is the audience you want? Now, in the world of social media in particular, it's really easy to be seduced by things like number of followers, number of likes, etc., because that's such an instantaneous way to feel like people like you. But there's no value in having 1 million people following you if they're not the audience you want. Let's say what you really want to do is shoot photos for magazine covers. If you have 1,000 teenagers following you, that's never going to get you to that goal because they aren't the audience you want. But the reason why we talk about the audience you have and the audience you want is because we're talking about different constituencies that exist out there in the world. And what you want to do is understand that different constituencies act in different ways, and they hang out in different places. And so you really have to guide the way that you run your marketing to take advantage of that. So for example, are you the type of person who likes to buy the old Toyota Prius because you're a Leonardo DiCaprio fan, or you're very eco-conscious? Or maybe it's the Tesla because you're a more sporty type of person and you believe that you're kind of a cutting-edge kind of guy. Are you the type of person who watches television on a TV and, God forbid, you still have a CRT tube? Or are you the type of person who watches TV now on your laptop, on your tablet, on your phone? And of course, a lot of you know a lot of people have cut their cable in favor of watching television not on their TV. So we're talking about very, very different demographics here. Kind of probably the aging demographic who watch a lot of CBS and 60 Minutes, and then a more cutting edge demographic who are watching Game of Thrones on HBO Go. And finally, are you the type of person who wears Lululemon while you're doing a new pose like this asymmetric scorpion pose? Or are you the type of person who wears Lululemon while you're playing video games because you just think it looks cool or because you think the clothes is comfortable, right? So again, who is the audience you want and who are the clients you want, right? Let's differentiate between the entire potential audience of people out there and the people that you really want to be your clients, because the people who are suitable to be your clients are really just a subset of your audience. Or it might be the case that the audience is split up into a bunch of different clients. You might have the people who are good for buying your stock photography. You might have people who want to buy your retouching services. Part of your audience, and therefore part of your clients, might be other photographers. As we found on the internet, there is a lot of room for photographers to become inspirational to other photographers. So you have people like David Hobby, the strobist, Chase Jarvis, etc., who couldn't have really existed prior to the internet. And they did a great job of identifying a new potential audience that didn't exist before. Other photographers, casual photographers, people who are willing to go out and spend $500 to $1,000 on a camera system, weren't professional photographers, but really wanted to know how to use that off-camera flash to take really great photos. So make sure, as we move along through the presentation and as you think about your marketing, you really make a determination of who the audience is that you want and who the audience is that you have. To reiterate what I said before, different constituencies act differently. So look at these: art buyers versus art directors, photo editors, agents, brides, of course, are a very, very different entity. Now think about it this way: if you do any wedding photography, people who aren't in the wedding photography business often think we're being sexist when we say, well, the audience is the bride, and they say, oh, excuse me, there is a groom there. But in most cases, I would probably say in the high 90% of cases, it's the bride who is making the call on who the photographer is, and it's the bride who's setting the tone. So in understanding who your audience is and who you're trying to market to, you really are trying to market to the bride, and that just goes into sort of the intelligence of the audience that you're going after. Other photographers are also clients you might want to have. You might be an educator, it might be for assisting, it might be for digital teching. Digital teching, of course, being, again, another discipline that didn't exist before the advent of digital cameras and computers. We had lighting techs, but we didn't have digital techs until the past 10 years. And in a lot of cases, digital techs will make more than photographers and will make more than first assistants and second assistants. So it's so interesting where you can sort of carve paths. And even though the price of a photo might have dropped because of the glut of photography that exists out there, we are also seeing a lot of new opportunities for people in the photographic industry that didn't exist before. And then finally, art collectors also represent a different constituency, right, who are motivated by different things like provenance and size and who previously owned it, etc. And those concerns are very different from a photo editor or an agent. An agent cares about how big your book is. Who are you bringing to their agency before they sign you? You need to make sure you're engaging your audience. And let's look at two different types of engagement spectrums. I'm using a lot of marketing speak, so I hope it doesn't confuse and turn you off. But I think it's important to sort of look at these things kind of from an academic standpoint. So forgive the language. You know, an engagement spectrum in the olden days was really talking about the untouched, the unmoved, the prospects, the customer, the client, and then finally the advocate. So what the heck are you talking about, Alan? Well, think about it in terms of like a Super Bowl commercial. If you don't watch the Super Bowl, then you're going to be untouched. You'll never know that a commercial ran. You might have seen the Coca-Cola commercial that ran where they're singing God Bless America in all these different languages. You might have seen the outbursts from some people around the country who said, that's blasphemous. Why would we ever sing God Bless America in a language other than English? So you were unmoved. You might have become a prospective customer because of that. You say, oh, wow, they made the drink look really good, and I like kind of the vibe that they're going after. Then you become a customer, and you become a client, and finally you become an advocate. Well, the new engagement spectrum is actually kind of different, because now, particularly again with the internet, it changes the way that we approach advocacy, in that you can become an advocate even before you're a customer or a client. You can help things go viral on Facebook because you saw this Coca-Cola ad and you said, oh, wow, this is great. Let me post it on my Facebook page. And people like and share and comment. And all of a sudden, you're an advocate for a product you might not have even tried before. This is pretty interesting implications for anyone who's trying to be a marketer out there, right? In that if you provide superior services, or if you happen to take a really interesting set of photography. We've seen a lot of interesting photography come out from all of these parents in the past few years. You might have seen the sets taken by the dads who were either bored, or somebody was sick and they decided to dress up their kids. There was a woman who, while her baby was sleeping, used sheets to create backgrounds, etc. And all of a sudden, she becomes famous and goes viral, and people are advocating her photography services without ever becoming her customer. So that's kind of an interesting thing to consider in terms of how personal projects can drive your marketing and become viral, and how people can advocate for you even though they're not your customer. Your content can therefore create an audience of highly engaged advocates. So how can you engage an audience? Well, find a niche and be an expert. We saw this early on. I mentioned the strobist, David Hobby, who said, hey, I'm just a newspaper staff photographer, but I'm going to create this blog to show people how to use off-camera flash. And he was by no means considered the expert in it when he started, nor was John Harrington, who's kind of now a guru about the business of photography. But I remember when John kind of started 10 years ago and would just post on various message boards about different business topics. And he established himself in this niche of business of photography and became an expert, and then wrote a book, etc. Being authentic, you hear authentic and authenticity as such a buzzword nowadays, but people kind of, that's sort of the zeitgeist, the spirit of the age, if you will. People want to keep it real, if you know what I mean, right? So that's why we've seen sort of a shift from this really hokey stock photography to more lifestyle photography. It's still kind of a dream. It's still kind of an idealized version of life, but it's not necessarily shot against the seamless white background anymore. You're trying to get more people in realistic situations. You're trying to be more authentic. Maybe people look a little more quirky. Maybe you're using hipsters instead of traditionally beautiful people. Make sure you're using the right tools like social media. Make sure you stick out your neck out and experiment to try to engage people in other ways. We often hear about photographer promos and how you can engage people through promos. The mailing promos kind of fell out of favor just because it was really hard to track. They're very expensive if you're going to print up, 1,000 and mail it out and buy a mailing list. And how do you track to see whether people opened it? And then all of a sudden, email marketing became very, very potent. But then we're seeing so many emails not being delivered, or they go straight to spam and they never get opened. So people are sort of moving back to traditional snail mail marketing, and we're seeing some pretty interesting things happen with the different types of mailers that people are sending out. So more custom type of engagement there, and that's really talking about experimenting and trying to differentiate yourself from the crowd. Well, what do photo buyers want in the first place? I'm going to show you a couple of things because I can't talk about everything. I want to let you know, in case you don't already know, that we do have a number of free educational guides that you can get from PhotoShelter at photoshelter.com, and then click on free guides. And at the end of last year, we released a 2013 survey on what buyers want from photographers in conjunction with agency access. And so, for example, here's a QR code in case you want to take a screenshot of that, and a bit.ly to get that later on. And here's some of the quotes that we got from people in that survey there.
I just want to read some of these really closely. I've been taking note of when a photographer's personal project creates a new style or a new trend in the industry. Great examples of this are from photographers like Ryan McGinley, Winkler Noah, and Chris Jordan. I like the reportage approach to photography we're seeing even in advertising. Of course, this isn't so new, but I still think it's showing kind of the resonance of the authentic reportage style of photography. I like the influx of young photographers whose images have a gritty, raw, and unpolished look. It's a direct contrast to the highly polished, perfectly lit, composited trend of the last few years. And thank God this creative director is saying that, because I have to agree. I was kind of over photoshopped and composited look that we had. But keeping on top of these trends is important, so I suggest that you download that guide. And then this is also interesting. Where do you find photographers? So of the 500 or so people that we surveyed, art buyers, photo editors, etc., 42% are still finding people through search engines, 25% through photo reps and agencies, 12% through portfolio sites, etc., etc. So as much as we like to think that search engine optimization, aka SEO, has gone away in favor of other things, SEO still is very potent marketing mechanism, and I would venture to guess that you've probably executed some searches today on a variety of things. If you missed that URL, you can just download the guide at photoshelter.com and then click on free guides at the top navigation there. You got to go to where people are hanging out. And so by way of another puerile example, when's the last time you went to the yellow pages to find anything of any service of any location? And the answer is probably not in several years. So similarly, where are people hanging out on the internet? And the answer, quite honestly, is Facebook. A lot of people are hanging out on Facebook. Now, you've probably heard Facebook isn't cool anymore. All the kids ditched their Facebook accounts. They're all hanging out on Snapchat and WhatsApp and Viber and Tinder and Instagram. But I also read another article which I agree with, which is Facebook, even though it might not be cool anymore now that it's 10 years old, has a tremendous amount of utility. So many people are on it, and so many people use it in a pretty consistent way. That is, posting interesting links. Of course, you will always get the people talking about politics and whatnot and things you don't want to see. But, all in all, I'm pretty surprised at the quality of content that my friends are curating for me via Facebook. And so I think it continues to be a place and will continue to be a place where people are hanging out. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing. You have to build a bigger funnel. And there's a concept in marketing called the marketing funnel. And it goes something like this. Here's the classic marketing funnel. And think about people walking past the Gap in a shopping mall. That's kind of akin to the awareness thing. I walk by, do I enter the store or not? If I enter the store, I continue down the funnel. If I don't go into the store, then I get kicked out of the funnel and the funnel narrows. It becomes increasingly harder to engage people across all the steps of the marketing funnel. So think about walking into the Gap. The next thing they want you to do is browse the shelves. They really want you to touch the merchandise, because the people who study marketing say if you can have a tactile sensation or an olfactory sensation with the product, you're more likely to engage with it. If you've ever been in a store where someone says, sir or madam, can I start a dressing room for you? That's another tactic, kind of proven tactic to get you to try the clothing on, because then they can say, wow, you look really good in that, and that happens to be on sale today, right? Now, how many times have you gone to the cash register and seen a line that was too long and said, you know what, forget it. I was going to buy this, but I'm in a rush. I got to leave. So think about this marketing funnel and whatever the situation is, whether it's the Gap or someone coming to your website or you cold calling someone, all the different ways that people fall out of the marketing funnel. And this particular marketing funnel is really interesting. It's made by a guy named Adam H. Cohen, adamhcohen.com. And like we mentioned with that engagement spectrum before, this advocacy thing becomes very interesting in the world of the internet, because the classic internet funnel ends when the conversion happens. Conversion would be something like somebody buys something. In the new marketing funnel, you create loyalty and advocacy. And the best way to think about that is like something with Yelp. And I realize once again, right is not spelled right. It should be W-R-I-T-E. So I apologize for that misspelling. But think of how influential Yelp reviews and reviews of that ilk are. How many times have you gone to Amazon, you're about to buy something, but you see that it has 3 stars or 3.5 stars instead of 5 stars? You're all ready to buy it, and then you start researching to find that one that has the 5 stars. We are so swayed by the online advocacy, and we can't even help it. Because who wants to go in and buy a 3-star item? And this happened to me the other day when I was looking for a new vacuum cleaner. My vacuum cleaner is 13 years old, and parts are falling off of it. And I was going to go buy the same vacuum cleaner, and I saw that it only had 3.5 stars. And I said, well, I wonder what the 4-star or the 5-star vacuum cleaner looks like. So in the version of your website, and just again, how do we transpose the marketing funnel onto your website? It could be someone visits your website, someone browses through your photos, they add images to the cart, they purchase the image, and they tweet about the sale, or they Facebook about the sale, right? And think about how you can improve these parts of the funnel. Now, there's a couple ways that you can approach creating a larger audience or more revenue as a result of your audience. And one way is to widen the top of the funnel. How can we just get more people through the mall walking by the Gap, right? Widen the funnel. Well, in the case of you as an online marketer, potentially, you could add more Facebook friends or more likes to your Facebook page. You can increase the size of your email list. You can increase the size of your Instagram followers. You could pass out more business cards. You could send out more mailing postcards, etc. That's probably the easiest thing you can do. Increasing the size of your mailing list, etc. That's pretty easy relative to improving the conversion points. How do you get more people to try on the shirt? Maybe you have to have more dressing rooms, because maybe the gating factor is that you only have 2 dressing rooms and they're always full. Maybe you need more people working the register. Have you ever been in a store, there's only 2 registers open, the line's really long, and the manager comes along and he says, Donna, can you come up and open the register at the front desk, right? They're trying to improve their conversion rate. They don't want people dipping out of the line when they're already ready to make the conversion. But remember this, never forget what your ultimate conversion is. When I spoke at the top of the presentation, we talked about things like, what if I have 1 million followers? What difference does that make? If you don't know what you're really trying to accomplish, like make more money, then it's really going to be hard to go along and measure these different metrics and know if you're doing well. You really want to know what you're trying to get after. Now, you might say, well, isn't money always the bottom line? It's not necessarily always the bottom line. It might be ultimately, but think about this. There are Instagrammers out there, and we'll talk about this a little bit later in the presentation. There are Instagrammers out there who have 1 million followers, and they have so much influence over those followers that people pay them to post in their Instagram feed. So they aren't thinking, oh, I'm going to get Instagram followers because I want to monetize each Instagram follower. It's not quite like that. I mean, it's a variant of that. It's when I have a lot of people, I can go to brands and say, I can influence your brand, help influence your brand, right? So we're going to talk about metrics, we're going to talk about analytics, but don't forget why you're measuring things and what you really want the outcome to be from that. The smell test. What is that smell test? What does that smell when you buy a new car? Andrew Fingerman, the CEO of PhotoShelter, likes to talk about this research that automobile manufacturers did, where one of the things people do when they go to a car dealership, or at least they used to do this, is close the door and listen to the sound that the car makes, because they want something that sounds solid when they close the door. So if you know anything about cars, you know that a lot of like muscle car manufacturers like Corvette, they'll actually tune the engines to sound beefier and grittier because they want to fool people in thinking, yeah, this is a powerful car. So the smell test, when you're dealing with your clients is very important because they're going to have visceral reactions to the ways that you're interacting with them. They want to make sure you're not going to waste their time. They want to make sure, these are bad signals. You have a poor attention to detail. You're not cut out for an assignment. Working together won't be pleasant. I can't tell you how many times we've talked to photo editors who say, given two photographers who are of equal talent and skill, I will always pick the person I'd rather hang out with. And that sounds rather obvious, but you might have to sort of check yourself to understand whether you're actually a pleasant person to hang out with. And if you were traditionally working with a customer and that customer is never calling you back anymore, and you're seeing that one of your competition is getting the jobs all the time, maybe it's not your skill, maybe it's just your people personality issue. And to me, working on interaction skills is just as important as improving your business skills, because it does improve your business. Some of the good signals: you're viewed as a specialist, right? So maybe you're a great product photographer. You have a personality or a point of view, and that's why things like blogs, Facebook entries, personal projects kind of give buyers or prospective clients an idea of what it's like to work with you. I know a lot of wedding photographers who've incorporated wedding videos on their homepage, but not wedding videos like a mashup of photos that they've taken, wedding videos of them working so that the bride can see, oh, this guy is cool, or this couple is cool. I'd love to work with them for, on the most special day of my life, I'd love to hang out with them for 8 to 12 hours. They want to know that you're easy to work with, and they want to know that you're a professional. So you have to think about all of these sort of litmus tests that exist in the world when you're presenting yourself to your potential audiences. The way you deal with people on Facebook, the way that you interact and banter back and forth with people on your Twitter feed. There have been so many examples of people just kind of mouthing off on social media, and then all of a sudden they go viral because people think they're a real jackass, right? You don't want to be in that situation. Now, I'm not saying that you're necessarily going to go viral, but just think about how certain things that you say may or may not turn off people, may or may not make people think you are a professional or not, reliable or not. You got to know your worth as you go along. One of the hardest things, I'm always surprised when I talk to photographers who do one type of photography very well and understand the dynamics of that market, and then all of a sudden they're asked to do something else. So you might be a wedding photographer, or you might be a photojournalist, and then one day the school that your kid goes to says, hey, we'd love you to come in and take pictures of the kids. We know you're a great photographer. And then the photographer says, oh my gosh, I don't know what to charge for that. It's my kid's school, so maybe I should just do it for free. And all of a sudden, all of this stuff that you've been advocating about photographers' rights and know your worth and da-da-da goes out the door because you don't really know what you're worth. And you're too afraid to be assertive to say, what I do requires skill and experience, and therefore I should be paid as such. And I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs and people outside of photography who have the same problem, and I often direct them to this: the NPPA's Cost of Doing Business Calculator. Now, this is an older screenshot, but if you Google for Cost of Doing Business Calculator, the NPPA's calculator will come up first. And it allows you to put in all of these different categories of expenses. And then you will also see near the bottom left, desired annual salary. You put in how many days you think you will be able to bill for shooting in the calendar year, and don't overestimate, it's only to your benefit. And what this generates is not what your rate should be, it tells you how much you need to make for every day of shooting to achieve this goal of paying for your expenses and generating your desired annual salary. So in this example here, we're seeing that the overhead cost for a day of shooting is $898, assuming you have the expenses and assuming that you're shooting for 100 days. So if you go out and you shoot a job that takes you an entire day and you're only paid $300, and that is one of the 100 days that you're shooting, you're effectively subsidizing that person for $500. You're paying them $500 for the opportunity to shoot. So think about that. It's so crucial for you to know how much you're worth to step out that door. And people say, well, how do I convince somebody to pay more, especially when they're not used to paying for photography? Well, build value in the service you provide. So Brian Smith is a friend of PhotoShelter, and he does a lot of editorial shoots and commercial shoots. And one of the things that he puts on his About page is an explanation of what you don't see in this photo. All of the people that he pulls together for a big shoot to make the shoot happen, like a producer, a location scout, wardrobe stylist, wardrobe assistant, groomer, hairstylist, prop stylist, food stylist, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. These are the hidden components of producing an effective shoot that most people won't think about. So when he gets on the phone and someone says, why are you charging me $3,000 for this shoot when the other guy is charging me $1,000? And you say, well, have they really scouted out where this is going to happen, and can they secure the legal rights to shoot there, et cetera, et cetera? We take care of all of this. We have the experience to know how to do all of this. Here is the QR code for that cost of doing business calculator. But again, it's easiest to just Google it because that search engine optimization works quite well. And my final example of know your worth is this. I don't know how many of you remember this supermodel, Linda Evangelista, from the 90s when supermodels were supermodels. Linda was quoted sort of infamously at the time for saying, we don't wake up for less than $10,000 a day. And people sort of gasped in horror at the audacity and the hubris of this woman to say, $10,000 a day, are you kidding me? But here's the thing. What Linda realized at the time was there were enough customers in her audience who would pay her $10,000 a day, that would get her to a level of earning that could afford her a quality of life, that for her to earn less than $10,000 a day was certainly a quality of life decision. Why wouldn't she just stay in bed and chill out by the pool instead of making $10,000 a day? So when you think about what you're worth, and the next time someone says, hey, take some photos for me, $150, think about what Linda Evangelista would say. She would say, you know what, go spend that time with your kids, go out with your boyfriend or your girlfriend, have a great time. It's not worth $150. Unless you could do that $150 job in 5 minutes from the seat of your comfortable chair in front of your desk. It's certainly not worth schlepping out your $3,000 body, your $1,500 lenses, trekking 20 miles across town to go take a photo and then spend 2 hours post-processing. It certainly is not worth that, and you need to know that. Search engine optimization. Here's another QR code for you. We have a guide, SEO for photographers, bit.ly/SEO for photogs. Search engine optimization, it's the most frustrating thing because it's something that we've kind of studied and focused on for several years. And, a casual layman's understanding of SEO is you've heard of things like Panda and Hummingbird, and Google changed the algorithm and a million sites got screwed by the change. But the fact of the matter is we all use search. And the fact of the matter is they continue to refine the algorithm to hopefully get you better and better search results. And I think by and large, Google does a pretty great job of presenting you with information that you want. So for example, something as simple as showing you a map of the top result and then giving you that link for directions and allowing you to type in home for your home. All of these little changes make your life that much easier and save you seconds per search, which add up to minutes per day, which add up to hours over the course of the year. So SEO will continue to be important because that's just how we find information in the short term and probably for the next 5 to 10 years before some new paradigm comes along. I always like to, whenever I'm speaking on the road, I always like to type in where I'm at and put in photographer. So in this case, I did Jackson Hole Nature Photographer. And we found Wild by Nature Gallery and Mike Cavarock, who's a PhotoShelter user, etc. Pretty interesting stuff there. Here's what you need to know about search engine optimization. The top 3 results on that search engine result page, aka the SERP, garner about 60% of the clicks, the top 3. The click-through rate on page 1 is about 9%. So you have a 1 in 10 chance, 10% chance of anything being clicked on that page. 90% of the time they won't click anything. 90% of the time they're refining the search because they don't see what they're looking for in those results. The click-through rate on page 2 is 1.5%. In other words, people aren't going to page 2. I remember when I started on the internet in 1995, you would run out of search results. You'd get to page 3 and the internet would end. That's how new the internet was. When's the last time you saw that happen, right? There are millions of search results for the weirdest things on the internet. And the fact of the matter is searching behavior has changed over time. People are more likely to refine a search than they are to go to page 2 unless it's something really niche-y. What influences search engine optimization? Well, there's these main 4 categories: on-page factors, domain strength, inbound links, social signals. Let me talk about these really fast. On-page factors are things like the text that appears, like photo captions and descriptions, and whether the metadata for those things appear in the HTML source code for that page. Domain strength is easily understood by, let's say you're a rocket scientist. Would you rather have your domain be nasa.gov, or would you rather it be nigerianrocketships.com? Right? And so in that simple example, we understand some domains are worth more than others. The number of inbound links and what domains they're from make a difference. And the social signals are of increasingly more importance. So how many people from Facebook are linking out, how many tweets about that, etc. And the internet is a dynamic place. So if there's a big upswing in social signals, like there is for many viral events, and your page is associated with that, then you might be number 1 for a short period of time, and then it might die back down. The SEO cookbook. So this is my approach to SEO, because SEO tends to be like, I don't understand what I should do. So this is what I like to do. And I'll go through each of these in depth, so I'm going to speed through the bullet points here. Create a hit list of words that are important to you. Search for those keywords to find your online competition. Use a backlink analyzer like majesticseo.com to gauge the competitiveness of the term and domains that you're up against, and then start building your SEO. So let me break that down for you. So what do I mean by building a keyword hit list? All this means is, what terms do you want people to search for to find your website? That is a keyword hit list. You should have maybe 20 to 50 different keyword combinations. They should be probably 3 words or more, because it's really hard to dominate when you have a very, very short search string, like 2 words, like nature photographer. You're not going to win for that, I can tell you that. But Jackson Hole nature photographer, right? Colorado nature photographer, now we're talking. So create a list of 20 to 50 of those terms. Then search for each one of those terms so that you can understand who your online competition is. I was doing this exercise with Tom Mangelson, who is arguably one of the top 3 nature photographers in the world. He has a gallery in Jackson Hole. We typed in Jackson Hole nature photographer, and we found that his online competition wasn't his real life competition. Mike Cavarock is not considered Mangelson's competition in real life. But to anyone searching on the internet for Jackson Hole nature photographer, Mike Cavarock is one of the kings, and Tom Mangelson doesn't exist for all intents and purposes, right? So the reason why we do this is because you might think you understand who your competition is, but you might find that online it's completely different. Here's this website that I talked about. It's a backlink analyzer. It's called majesticseo.com, and they have a free service that you can use. And what I like to do is I like to take all of the people in that search result page who aren't me. So for example, let's go back to that last page. wildbynaturegallery.com and archive.freeroamingphotography.com. I'm going to put wildbynature.com, and then I'm going to hit explore, and what I'm going to see is the number of backlinks, so the number of people who are linking to this website from the number of different referring domains. There's 40,000 backlinks from only 100 domains. So that might be like WordPress.com is one of those 100 domains, but there might be 20,000 different links coming from WordPress to this website. What this gives me a sense of is how competitive it is to displace this person at number one? Well, I will tell you, 40,000 backlinks is a lot, right? Do you think with a concerted marketing campaign that you could get more than 40,000 people to link to your website in the next 6 months to a year? The answer is probably no. But the interesting thing about this one is it's only coming from 108 domains, which make me think that maybe Wild by Nature paid for some of these links, and maybe some guy in China or India had some little robot go out and make links for him, because you would expect to have a little more domain diversity. But that's complicated SEO stuff, and we don't want to talk about that. All I want to say to you is the difference between the number 1 spot on the first search engine result page and the number 10 spot is usually orders of magnitude different. That is, it is very difficult to displace number 1, but it's not that difficult to displace number 10. And I would guess that if we went to Jackson Hole Nature Photographer and we got that number 10 result and we popped it into majesticSEO.com, we'd probably see more like a few hundred backlinks from tens or a couple dozen domains. So now I ask you, could you get more than a couple hundred backlinks in the next 6 months with a concerted effort? And you might say, yeah, that's very possible. Now, if the 10th result doesn't has too many backlinks, then maybe that's just not a good term. Well, thank God your keyword hit list has 20 to 50 terms on it, right? We want to have a spectrum of competitiveness on those keywords, and we want to keep building our SEO. Because the goal as far as your online presence is concerned is you want to be not the needle in the haystack. You want to be the haystack. I made that up. That's patented. You can't use that, okay? But that's a great one, okay? Here is actually number 10. It looks like I did it. 10 backlinks from 5 referring domains. So can you get more than 10 backlinks from 5 referring domains? We could probably do that with the number of people on the webinar right now. If we said, hey, everyone, go to your blog or whatever, your Tumblr, and let's all link to Jeff Diener Gallery and have the text say Jackson Hole Nature Photographer, he'd probably be number 3 if all of us did that on this webinar. So here's the thing about search engine optimization. It isn't perfect, but there are an awful lot of smart engineers at Google working on it. You want to build that largest online footprint possible, and this is another reason to participate in social media, because those social signals become increasingly more important, or have been more important over time. Which brings us to your website. Your website is a marketing tool. It is not an online portfolio. And getting people to your website is hard work. Think of how hard it is to get someone to click onto your website. You have to convert them while you have them captive. What the heck do you mean, Alan? It's not an online portfolio. So the question, it goes back to what we said at the top. Does it meet the needs of the audience you have, and does it meet the needs of the audience you want? So a really simple example is some people are super obsessed, and maybe rightfully so, about image theft. And so they watermark the hell out of their images on their website. Well, I'll tell you what. If your goal is to shoot high-end vodka bottles, you better not have watermarks on any of your images, because the people who buy, who are the art buyers for those brands, don't want to deal with that. They want to be able to drag and drop your images onto their desktop to show their bosses or show their creative agencies, and you cannot have watermarks on them. So if you don't know who the audience you want, if you don't know who that audience is, you're never going to know what requirements you're going to need to have on your website. So that's why you really need to know, as a part of your marketing plan for 2014, who the heck are you going after? Some features to consider: searchability, e-commerce, portfolio capability, private galleries, high resolution file transfer. You gotta be able to work on tablets and phones. We are seeing a pretty steady increase across all of the people using PhotoShelter of people on mobile devices accessing website. And make sure that there are social media tools like, oh, I liked this, let me post it to Facebook, etc. So don't get caught in the trap of, oh, I updated my website 5 years ago, I'm fine. You know what? You're not fine. If you updated it 5 years ago, you're out of luck, you're out of date. Make sure your website works for the audience you have and the audience you want. Speaking of social media, hey, we just came out with this guide, one of our most popular guides ever, the Photographer's Guide to Facebook at bit.ly/FaceBKGuide. And there's a QR code for that. And here's a cute little cover for that. Social media also attracts different constituencies. So where is the audience you want hanging out? Are they on Facebook? Are they on Twitter? Are they on Instagram? Maybe they're not even on social media. Learn the best practices of each given platform. If most of your audience, intended audience, and actual audience is hanging out on Twitter, then you better know the best way to optimize Twitter. And likewise with Facebook and Instagram, etc. So Facebook, what do we know about Facebook? Well, photos and video we know do better than text or embedded articles. So the algorithm, what they call EdgeRank, or what some people call EdgeRank, is biased towards photo and video content. Increased frequency generally does better, and I would venture to guess this is true for social media in general. I mean, not like once an hour, but certainly you want to be interacting once a day, or at least on the weekdays, in order to attract regularity in posts and people interacting with your posts. You can ask questions of your audience to yield interaction, because the more people that comment, the more people that like, the more people that share, increases the number of people that see that post. And you want to balance self-promotion with information. So speaking of Tom Mangelson, here's a little example of this. This is Tom's Facebook page. Look him up and like him. He's got great, great nature photos. So when I sat down with Tom, he said that he posted a single gallery once a week. He watermarked all of those images, so there would be like 20 or 30 images in this gallery. He had some customer interaction via name the image contest. So he loves to name images. So, you know, salmon jumping into bear's mouth will have a cool name, right? So I suggested a number of changes to optimize his Facebook presence, and these were some of the suggestions. So instead of doing one post per week, we did with multiple images, we did daily postings of a single image. We included the URL in the watermark. So in case the image was distributed outside of Facebook or somebody came across it without knowing who Tom was, they could go straight to the URL and see his website. Because his ultimate conversion goal, he's very mindful of that, is to sell images, he noted on every image on the Facebook page that they were available for sale. And this resulted in an immediate increase in the number of likes and shares. Your results may vary, of course. But again, if you're doing the same thing every day, don't expect stuff to change. You gotta make time for experiments. You have to adopt a testing culture. So this is what Tom wrote me after he made some of these changes. The great gray owl has gotten the most likes of any image we've ever posted, over 3,000 this morning, reaching over 50,000 people. He reached over 50,000 people by simply changing the strategy to posting. Now again, your mileage may vary, and maybe this isn't the case anymore because he did this last fall. Maybe things have changed with his audience, etc. But even if this worked for a quarter and he increased the number of likes that he had by 25% or 50%, and he built the top of his funnel, don't you think that's going to benefit him in the long run? Well, if he wasn't receptive to change, this would have never happened, right? So it just sort of underscores an approach. And an approach that you need to have is to really build a hypothesis. Don't go sort of willy-nilly and start your experimentation just because Alan said you need to change stuff up. You need to have like informed hypotheses before you try any experiment. So here are some ideas. Theme of the week. Maybe stars are the theme of the week, or maybe kids are the theme of the week. Behind the scenes article. Different ways of user engagement, like show us your print hanging in your home. What's the most scenic place you've been before? Where would you like Tom Mangelson to go to take pictures of nature? And then we come back to, is this social media outlet, Facebook, the audience that you want? In Tom's case, yes, he sells to consumers like you and me. But again, if you're that guy who wants to shoot high-end vodka bottles, then Facebook is not probably the place you want to be. Create a massive online footprint. And here's my trademark phrase again, don't be the needle in the haystack. be the haystack. You also have to understand, and you'll see this reflected in Google Analytics if you've ever logged in the past year or so, that marketing is multi-channel and multi-touch. It's pretty rare that someone interacts with your brand in whatever form that is, on your website, through a printed piece, etc., and immediately becomes your customer. That's probably not what you do in real life anyway either. Marketing is multi-channel and multi-touch. They might have seen an article about you in PDN. Then maybe somebody friended or commented on a post that you had on Facebook. Then maybe 3 months later, you had a need for a high-end vodka bottle photographer and you remembered this guy, and then you contacted him and you became their customer, right? So marketing nowadays is not like, oh, let's run a Super Bowl commercial and then we expect to then become a great company. It's usually like, we had several different channels that we were using: online, social media, TV ad, print ad, etc. We assume that if we do this consistently for 3 to 6 months, that we'll get some results out of that. And so that's what I tell people. If any sort of marketing effort that you're going to do, you got to do it for like 3 months before you get any sort of result. Creating that $5,000 direct mail piece is akin to running a print ad. You don't want to do it. That one touch that you can't even track, creating that $5,000 direct mail piece is akin to exhibiting at trade shows. Like, who goes to trade shows anymore? Apple doesn't go to trade shows anymore. Why? Because they can just do it themselves. So instead of spending $5,000 to send out 5,000 postcards or however many it is, why not try a shorter run blurb book, or experiment on Facebook, or open up an Instagram account? Why not try some low-hanging fruit and see if you can gain some traction on that? But have a plan and hypotheses that you're going to test. Use tried and true techniques like a coupon. It's crazy to me that we enter holiday seasons and photographers aren't taking advantage of couponing in some form or fashion. Now, sites like PhotoShelter have coupon capabilities, so you can it'll generate a coupon code, or you can enter your coupon code and send it to your customers, and they can get whatever percentage off that you want. But there's no reason why a wedding photographer couldn't do the same and say, hey, it's the off season. If you book with me now, you get 20% off my regular rates. Book me now, pay me in advance, you get 20% off, saves you the money, right? So there's a lot of different ways you can incentivize people to convert and become your clients. You got to measure stuff. It's like if you're trying to lose weight, but you don't weigh yourself, and all you're doing is kind of looking at yourself in the mirror, and you're like, yeah, I look pretty good. And then 3 months later, you step on the scale and you've gained 5 pounds, right? If you want to chart progress, you need a quantitative way to understand what's happening. Google Analytics happens to be a great way to do that. We're working on a new version of this guide, but in the meantime, you can download this because a lot of the concepts are still the same. You gotta hook up Google Analytics. And if you have a Facebook page, you should be looking at Facebook Insights, which is only available if you have a Facebook page and not if you're running it from your personal. That's why we always advise people to use their Facebook page. Let me show you some examples to sort of get the juices flowing here. And these aren't necessarily the best of the best, but there are aspects of these websites that I want to show you from different photographers that I really, really like. The first is a guy named Emiliano Granado. He's a lifestyle editorial photographer based in New York. Emiliano also has a great newsletter that you need to subscribe to. He just had a nice piece, I believe it was in the New Yorker, about the Tough Mudder competitions. You know, this thing where they run through the mud, swim through the cold rapids, and run through fire at the end. So he did a great piece. Great sense of style, great lighting, great photographer. He's one of the few photographers that I've run into who have a newsletter sign up on their homepage. Remember how I said it's so difficult to get people to come to your website? And so I said, you better convert them somehow. Well, a soft conversion would be collecting their email. It's not them opening their wallet up, but it's them giving you permission to spam them in the future. So Emiliano puts out a newsletter about once every quarter. People anticipate getting it because it's always kind of this, snarky Emiliano attitude with great photography. And it's good stuff. And so if you have the ability to put a newsletter sign up on your homepage, please do it. That's what I love about his site. Propaganda Photo, David Rawcliffe out of the UK. he was photographing a lot of these soccer matches, or football as we call it outside of the US. He was competing with the wires, trying to upload all of these images, get them on the wires, and then instead he just said, you know what, I'm also just going to put them on my website. And people can come to my website and check them out right away instead of waiting for them to go up on the wire. And he started getting clients to come to his website to bypass the wire services, etc. Because he has all of the pricing capability and the distribution capability and the lightbox capability. And it was also a way for fans to come and check it out. So he was expanding the audience that he had to not only professional buyers, but fans as well. So I like the fact that it's e-commerce enabled. Trey Ratcliffe, you might know, he's kind of the HDR guy. Talk about owning a niche. I'm not a big HDR fan, to be honest with you, but here's a guy that kind of said, this is going to be my thing. And Trey became a huge educator, a speaker who talks not only about photography, but about online marketing, etc. He was so successful and is so successful that he moved his family over to New Zealand, where he's hanging out. And it's just a real, if you want, we talked about David Hobby, we talked about Chase Jarvis, and Trey's right up there. I think Trey has something ridiculous, like 6 million followers on Google+. So he's really done well for himself in becoming that quintessential internet marketer. Stephen Voss at stephenvoss.com has these sort of funny ads, emails that he sends out to people. And we talked about how to differentiate yourself from the competition and how to let people know that you're a professional. So he has, Stephen is ready to go. Stephen does his homework. Stephen knows when to pay cash. And I believe the story behind Stephen knows when to pay cash was he had to bribe some guy to take the photo. To get the shot, he had to bribe some guard, or something. I'm sure I'm screwing up the story. But again, it's showing the resourcefulness, and it's also showing kind of this marketing prowess of like, yeah, I'm a badass. I made the shoot happen in Russia because I knew when to pay cash. Paul Octavius, great photographer out of Chicago. You might have seen his stuff on Instagram. He always got that red flag that somebody's carrying around. Look how simple the navigation is on his site. Projects, shop, and about. Now talk about trying to be like not just a brand, but trying to be your own lifestyle. The guy creates like his own shop. And again, he's enabling e-commerce because he wants to convert his clients. And so anyone who's seen him on Instagram, and he has, I can't remember, like 150,000 people following him on Instagram. And some of them are going to end up on this website, and some of them are going to click on shop, and some of them are going to buy something. But if he didn't have e-commerce enabled on his website, then it's all for naught. Like, what's the point of directing people to the website if all they do is they click on about and see where he's from, right? Alice Gow, talk about Instagrammers. 693,000 people following Alice. Alice started as an intern at a food magazine or a food website. She said that she wanted to become a photographer. She went out, she bought some photographic equipment. Simultaneous to that, she started Instagramming. She has this very clean aesthetic, which I think is really personifies kind of the successful style on Instagram. There's kind of it's kind of solitude images, but they're very clean. The white balance is very, very neutral. 693,000. When you have that many people, people will pay you to post things on Instagram. So even though it's not her intent to be an Instagram photographer, because she has her own real portfolio website and is working as a photographer, it's just such an interesting a way of identifying an audience and going after it and being able to monetize that audience. Emily Nathan, another photographer, started a website called Tiny Atlas Quarterly, where she assembled some of her photographer friends, some of her stylist friends, etc. And whenever they were out in interesting places, they basically coordinate their own shoots. And they put them up on this website, and I believe there's a print version coming as well. But it's basically a marketing vehicle that's just done so well. I mean, it looks like a freaking J. Crew catalog, right? Or something of that ilk. And people really just want to see this. And I think it's been very, very effective in differentiating her from the rest of the crowd. And the last example that I want to show you is Roger Sakela from lensrentals.com. There are a lot of different places that you can rent lenses from, and they're all quite good. The thing that I like about Roger is that he started writing pretty technical articles because he identified this audience of gearheads who are really interested in the internal mechanics of lenses and build quality and how certain filters would scratch the front element of a lens, etc. And the effect of writing so technically about lenses where no one else was doing it is that he started being re-syndicated or syndicated by other publications. So DP Review, Digital Photography Review, which is now owned by Amazon, which is one of the largest photography sites on the web, often republishes his stuff. And people geek out over it, and I bet they've had a pretty good increase in number of customers as a result of these articles. So again, he picked a niche, he owned the niche, and he's doing very well as a result of it. And a lot of that has to, all of these examples that I showed you really show an understanding of who the audience is and what information they're looking for and how to convert them into customers. And even though some of these examples are kind of soft conversions, like you might find this review on DP Review, but you're like, wow, I got to check out, I want to know more about this guy. And it's not just, lensrentals.com reviewed this lens. It's branded with Roger, who's one of the founders. Roger Sakela is talking about this. So he's also done a really good job of branding not only Lens Rentals, but himself as an expert in this area. And I think that he is reaping the benefits of approaching it this way. So we have come to the end of the presentation. I know there was a lot of information that we presented. You might want to watch this video again when we put it back up online at blog.photoshelter.com. But I do want to reiterate a couple points. The first is what I started with, which is business as usual leads to results as usual. So if you really want 2014 to be different than 2013, then you better start making some changes, but you need to make smart changes. And the number one change, the number one starting point to me is identification of an audience. If the audience that you chased last year just turned out not to be so great, maybe there were too many wedding photographers in your area. Maybe you have to branch out. Or maybe you were going after the wrong type of bride. Maybe you need to go after a more affluent bride. Or maybe you need to shoot more. Or maybe you were advertising in the wrong places. You need to do that homework to understand who your audience is and how you're speaking to them, and whether the information and the signals that you're putting out are appropriate for that audience. And that's kind of marketing. That's kind of marketing 101. I mean, I'd love to go into marketing 401 where it gets a lot more complex, but so many of us aren't doing some of the basic things out there that we could be doing to be successful. But I guarantee you, if you do some of these steps, you understand what your cost of doing business, it's really going to change the way that you approach kind of the academic side of business. And for me, that's always been a really, really attractive part of being an entrepreneur, is being able to sort of twist the knobs and pull the levers on these controls and see what works and what doesn't work. Thank you so much. I'm sorry for going a little bit over today, but I hope you found this informative. I want to let you know, in case you love hearing my voice, but you miss my face so much, Sarah Jacobs and I will be doing PhotoShelter Happy Hour live on our YouTube channel, Eastern Time, noon on Friday, where we talk about different topics that have come up in the world of photography during the course of the week. It's a half-hour show / podcast. It's a lot of fun. Join us for that on youtube.com/photoshelter. And make sure you check out the webinar schedule for more webinars in the future. Thank you so much. Have a great day.